Hello, this is Dr. Coach K coming to you live on all the platforms. This is another discussion and coaching session and lecture. We call this the Game Changers Curriculum. Another acronym is GAME. And what we do is introduce the audience to different ideologies that we have in our society. We have the ideology that the rich get richer and the poor gets prison. And we have another ideology of evoking excellence into others through coaching and the prosperous soul, how to self-govern yourself. When we have all these doctorate or scholars talking about it, Jeffrey Raymond, Paul Layton, and then we have James Flattery, and then we have Cindy Trim. So let's begin. So we are just going to take a second here while I adjust the mic. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So we're going to start where we left off. We're going to work through these textbooks. I like to read some of the textbooks and then discuss some of the insights and revelations and research that I have had over the years and interact with some of the questions that I get from those online in regards to these topics. The first one is the rich get richer and the poor gets prison. This is really close to my heart because we have seen over the years from Martin Luther King Jr. with him writing about strength to love. Sorry, the strength to love, and we went through lectures. I did over 100 lectures on strength to love about Martin Luther King's relationship and interaction with the beloved community, how he built a civil society to love one another and to love thy neighbor. Now, those that do not know who I am, I have built my own civil society called the Avatar Nation Generation X, which talks about being in the highest form in your potential, how to interact in society with your self-government, using resources, and to transcend all systems and barriers and challenges through self-government, through the word of God, the spoken word of inspiration of the universe, of the creator, of our ancestors, how to interact with more currencies than the manifestations of the material world. Materialism is just one element. We have the power of the spirit, and the spirit is infinite. It functions on the infinite mathematics. It functions on equality mathematics. It functions on the idealism that finite is just temporary or a phase, a season, and infinite and eternity is the real timeline, and who we are in that real timeline, the infinite realism. And we discuss these elements in everything I do. My ministry is called the Bride Ministries. It has a saga called the Queen's Circle that talks about the war cry. The war cry campaign is a music campaign, and it mixes the war dance with the battle cry and the spoken word using current societies like popular culture, hip hop, urban. It also interjects some of the spiritual aspects of journaling, understanding the world around you, and implements the love of Christ, the love of the Father, the love of the Holy Spirit, and the mysteries of life. What do we do now? How do we move through this life and where we go from here, especially when we have these hidden agendas that are not understood, that are mysteries. So let's begin with what the scholar Raymond and Leighton talks about: the rich get richer and the poor get prison. So we have these two worlds that are symbolism of heaven and earth, and heaven and hell. So we have rich get richer, so that's one world. And then we have prison, which is the poor get prison, which is another world. So we have two multi-dimensional worlds that is discussed. Of course, there's more than one dimensions, but we're focused on two major systems in our ideology or in our world system, and that's prison, and then there's rich, the rich world and the poor world, the prison world and the non-prison world. So we're on page 32, and that is chapter 1. We're still on chapter 1. So I like to take my time to go through these books because they're a target for reference, a target for to access more insight, what other people are thinking, especially researchers or scholars that are thinkers and that's doing math all day and have, a society that watch them and peers that critique them, and it's a process, a scientific process they go through. They're not always accurate, but they do have some level of standpoint that you can use to build a case. So let's begin. These long-standing trends have worsened because of the 2008 financial crisis, which was the result of an aggressive policy of financial deregulation. The developments are also the predictable outcome of policies that cut services to the poor while reducing the taxes of the wealthy. In 1982, a group of 34 prominent economists uh, economists sharply criticized then President Reagan economic policy as extremely regressive in its impact on our society, redistribution wealth and power from the middle class and the poor to the rich, and shifting more of the tax burden away from businesses and onto low and middle income consumers. At the same time, a study released by the Urban Institute concluded that the Reagan administration's policies are not only aiding upper income families at the expense of the working poor, but also are widening the gulf between affluent and poor regions of the country. The study maintained that the combined effect of the administration's tax and social service spending cuts was to penalize working families near the poverty line who receive some federal benefits, creating major work disincentives. So I like to kind of delve into using some of these role plays that we see in our society. So you have different leaders and leader styles that create these environments, and these environments are unjust. And the injustice is real, but they're finite realism, not infinite realism. They're seasonal injustices. They may look permanent, but they're not infinite permanent because there's more to the naked eye. So if you think about the world around us, how there's many activities going on all at once, you can understand that we are under a microscopic view when we talk about certain issues. So when we talk about these issues, remember when we zoom in on them, we're talking about a certain type of leadership style. Not all leadership styles are like this. And when we go into the micro and the covert and overt issues, these are variables seen and unseen. We can really dive into how do we build our own ecosystem? How do we build our own civil society? And then our own civil society develops equally and then matures into whether it becomes finite realism or infinite realism. So if it becomes infinite realism, it supersedes or exceeds the finite realism. So let me use an example. We know there's prison systems, and within those prison systems, you have one leadership style, but you have many components. It's almost like playing chess. You have many players on a chess board. If they all follow according to the rules, then the outcome is finite realism. But if one strategically changes the formation, whether through thought or feeling, it shifts into an infinite. It's called deviation mathematics. It changes the outcome. Even slightly, it still changes, like even fractions, it still changes the outcome completely from finite realism into infinite realism. So, what does that look like? I tell people all the time, when you're in a situation and you have the power of your mind is on infinite realism. And so when you use that infinite realism, you change the outcome of your situation. Even if you're imprisoned, if you allow your mind to stay in that ecosystem, you get the results of finite mathematics because that is the probability they use, those formulas to captivate or to entangle one into their results. So let me explain that. If they have created an ecosystem, they definitely created and one outcome, maybe a few, but not infinite outcomes. So if you change a fraction of that variable, which is x plus 1 equals 1x, just a fraction will change the outcome from their realism. So if they have put you in a model that you think negative thoughts, you do negative actions, you get a finite realism, which they have calculated in that system, which we call prison. Poor gets prison. But they did not calculate the fractions within poor gets prison. So what happens if the poor transforms their mind and their heart? They still get prison, but then what if the outcome is they transform the prison ecosystem within the system? Then you have a transformation within the leadership of the dynamics. So how could that be? So one example is a ecosystem may have deers, it may have lions, but it can grow new creatures within the deers and the lions, which is a transformation of the mind. So let's say these deers starts growing mentally strategy. So now the deers are becoming or adapting to their environment to a different frequency, a different vibration, and they get different results. Same thing with lions. Let's say a lion starts to choose vegetation instead of eating meat. They have transformed themselves in their biological, makeup, and they get a different results. So these things can happen in the human life, in the civil societies as well. You can create a civil society no matter what. You don't have to traditionally be grouped and categorized. There's beyond material components that is developed through relationship, connectivity, energy. And so this is definitely a building conversation lecture on poor gets prison and the rich get richer. I have one more thing to add on to this discussion today is we talked about the poor get prison, but the rich get richer. We have a truth or a factor that we've seen rich have everything and still be miserable, still want to kill, still destroy, still want a population control, still want to see death, destruction, and theft, still capitalize off of prisons, still do the things they do. So we know that wealth or riches or having all resources of the planet do not resolve the emptiness and the void and the chaos from within. It takes meditation, it takes self-control, it takes understanding and revelation as well as love. It takes the power and edification of love. And without those elements, which comes from the institution of God, because you can't duplicate love. You can't create love. These are elements like water, fish. You can't create these. You can't duplicate them. You know, the wealthy has clones. It has master genetics. It has master the elements of nature, but they cannot duplicate the origins of what it is. The origins is infinite, and what they've created is finite. So the finite timeline is different from the infinite timeline. And only one that can control the infinite timeline is not them. They can't create it and they can't duplicate it. They can create a similarity, off brand, but they cannot hit the exact formula. Even when they said they have, it's still a fraction off. It is still different elements that is not included. They think they have the accuracy, but they're very close, but still not on target. And how can we know? Because infinite timelines produce different than finite timelines. Finite timelines is seasonal. And so whenever you see all of the systems in history in ancient times to now, they've been finite. If they are infinite on infinite timelines, infinite realisms, we have not seen it. They've been cloaked. They've been hidden. But we can read some of the things they have done and make our own calculations on whether or not they became infinite or they was resolved in finite universe or realism. So let's wrap this conversation up for today and begin on evoking excellence in others through coaching and the prosperous soul after I take a little break. So if you are interested in the next conversation, stay tuned. This is Dr. Coach K signing off. One love, much love, all love. Peace and blessings to you and your world.